Let's talk about the transformation from a title pegged by the public as toothless bulldog for not looking into the previous audit reports to now being very active and vigorous to deal into the audit reports. What led to this transition?
Well, firstly, I think it's about the personality. Different people have handled the Public Account Committee before. We've had a number of deputy speakers because by our standing orders, the minute you are elected the deputy speaker of the House, statutorily you are the chairman of the Public Account Committee. And we have seen all of them make their own contributions in different ways. We've had the Honorable Chukuma Johnson, we've had the Honorable General Ramadan Majuba, we've had the Honorable Segepo Solomon Thomas before me, and everybody has their own strategy. My strategy is, it is an accountability and transparency report, and it is for the public to see and understand exactly how we deal with it. There is no in-camera session. There is nothing secret about it. The document itself is a public document. So I see no reason why a document is in the public and I would hold hearings on that document in private, or I would condone conversation around issues raised in that particular report in my office or in the conference room wherein I would restrict or twist the press under SO 75. So what I've done since taking over is firstly to respect the Constitution. And the Constitution in section 103 says the press has the rights to witness every sitting, every hearing, every committee proceedings. But however, they should report exactly what transpired in that hearing. They should not add, neither reduce or modify what transpires in the hearing. If there are resolutions taken, they should report the resolutions as they are. So for me, that particular provision overrides whatever it is in the standing orders in SO 75. Because SO 75 is saying premature publication. Mm-hmm. That is to say, the committee is looking into AYV, for example, and there are unfolding events around the hearing on AYV, and the press decides to carry it out, or to carry an article or a media headline on that particular unraveling incident. It is not wrong by the Constitution. It was what transpired in the committee that the press is reporting to the public. So for me, I see that as the benchmark for the work of the PAC. So when I took over in June, I was elected in May. When I took over in June, I reset the entire structure of the PAC. Firstly, members of parliament are not net people. They don't have knowledge on everything. They tend to understand issues as they are presented to them, but they don't have expertise in every field for them to understand what the numbers are in terms of looking at the general purpose financial statement, which is the audited account of government, which shows a number of layers of issues, including taxes, arrears, revenues, expenditure, salaries, a number of issues that is detailed in the GPFS.
Let me underline that word you just used, the expertise, which perhaps the members of the committee may not have in every field. How do you go about getting whatever the procedure is to get maybe a second opinion or an expert opinion in some of these technical details?
Okay, firstly, the standing orders of parliament gives mandate to the speaker, and under standing order 42, chairmen of committees, when once they sit in the committee, they sit as the speaker. They sit in replica of the speaker, representing the speaker of parliament. So whatever they decide becomes a decision taken by parliament and overseen by the speaker. So the standing order gives the speaker the right to solicit expert advice in areas, particularly when it comes to budget and financial issues, wherein members of parliament are not versed in. So for us in the PAC, what I did was, because we don't have the expertise, most of us don't have general understanding on all of the issues raised in the audit report, we would have engagement. I initiated an engagement with the audit service for them to give us a thorough appraisal, a thorough debrief of the report as it was presented to Parliament and on the table of Parliament, to give us the schedules of all of the issues raised, because you would see an issue raised on a particular MDA, but the general public will not be privy to the schedules. For example, if there is a procurement issue, that procurement process were not followed, or several suppliers were contracted, but those suppliers did not deliver, you will not see sometimes the full list of all the suppliers and the infractions that were caused. So the audit service would give you that, and you discuss, because in most of the reports, like you have seen, you will realize that they would quote certain provisions in legislations or regulation. But beyond those few highlights of regulations or provisions in the legislation, there are other provisions in other legislations that would either tie into that infraction or that would provide for penalties for breach of that particular provision. So what they would do is to just give a general summary of what has obtained during the course of the audit. So we'll sit to them. When I took over, I ensured that we had a session. We sat with them, we had an extensive discussion on it. So members were prepared. Members were given the necessary emergency short briefing for them to be prepared to take up the audit report. Further to that, I also encourage from within, we'll have a debrief session every day. We'll look at the issues, like we'll have a mock session before we sit. Okay. So we'll look at the issues, we'll analyze them, we'll agree, and where necessary, whether it's for me or from other members, would highlight the other legislations that are related to that particular infraction. So that is how I have been able to manage the membership and also develop their appetite for openness and for further reading and further inquiry, because you cannot understand the report in detail if you don't know other legislations. For example, the report is holistic, but it has to do with the Income Tax Act of 2000, it has to do with the GST Act of 2009, it has to do with the Public Procurement Act of 2016, the Public Procurement Regulation of 2020, the Public Financial Management Act of 2016, Public Financial Management Regulations of 2018, and other subsequent legislations related to them, or other policies. So if you look at the current report now, let me just cite an example. You will realize that a lot of reference was made to the Civil Service Code regulations and rules for the HRMO. So these are issues, issues that will come up. So you prepare your membership. So once your members are prepared, they will not be experts in the field, but they would have the requisite knowledge to probe and get the necessary action taken with regards to those infractions.
The PSC is very integral in the operations and activities of Parliament. More so, it's one that speaks to accountability within various government ministries, departments, and agencies. And its work seeks in tune with what's been presented by the Auditor General's office. What's the implication of the removal of the Auditor General on this year's audit reports?
Well, two things are critical about the finality of the removal of the Auditor General and a deputy. First, the Constitution gives mandates to the President, like for judges in Section 137, to suspend a judge. And the same procedure that the President will use for the suspension and maybe further removal of a judge is the same provision that is prescribed for the Auditor General. So you would have to set up the tribunal would have to look at the evidence, all the evidence profiled before the tribunal, the defense and everything. Then the tribunal will come up with a report. And the report will be presented back to the President that had initiated the process as provided for by the Constitution. And once the report is presented, it is up to the President to accept or reject the report. And if the report is accepted with its recommendations, it is now for the executive to send that report to Parliament. And Parliament's role in 137.7 and 137.10 is simple. It's just to vote, to agree or to disagree. So what comes to Parliament is the byproduct of the processes laid out by the Constitution, and Parliament's role is to cast a vote on whether they agree to those processes or they do not agree to those processes. So the final outcome is the decision made by Parliament, because the Auditor General is a staff of Parliament. If you look at the report, you go to section 1194. When they prepare the reports, they present it to Parliament. So the Auditor General's report is the property of Parliament. So whatever they do, even their audits, it is Parliament that appoints auditors to audit the Auditor General. Even their reports, when they do performance audits on the audit service, it is Parliament that has the right to look at the performance audits done on the audit service. Their account, it is Parliament that examines their own accounts. So the Auditor General's office is an extension of parliamentary accountability and transparency duties.
We'll talk a lot about the PSC, but again, was Parliament so far satisfied with the procedures in the removal of the Auditor General?
It is for us to either A, accept or reject. Our satisfaction level comes in the votes. And if you look at the vote that comes out that Parliament had in, was it the 21st of December, you would realize that the outcome of the tribunal's report and its recommendation is not under concession, because it was approved by 2/3 of members of Parliament. Even though the report does not require 2/3, but it was approved by 2/3 of members of Parliament. Even though the report required 2/3 of members in Parliament, but it was approved by 2/3 of members of Parliament, meaning totality of Parliament. So it shows clearly what Parliament's position is with regards to that particular report and its recommendation.
Did you vote?
I voted, yes.
And you voted in favor of the removal?
And that is subject to section 37 of the Constitution. It is secret ballot.
Honorable Tawa, let's look at this vibrance that the Public Accounts Committee now has, which is celebrated, has somewhat left the Anti-Corruption Commission sort of maybe useless or inactive, especially when it comes to the Auditor General's report.
Well, there are accountability units or bodies in government led by the PSC, because Parliament is an organ of government. Part of the 3 organs of government, Parliament is one. Lead in terms of the accountability and transparency space. But however, we work with all the other accountability bodies. We work with the Public Procurement Authority, we work with the Audit Service, we work with the Accountant General's Office, we work with the internal audit units in ministries, departments, and agency, so as the Anti-Corruption Commission. They have a mandate that Parliament does not have. They have a prosecutorial power. So whatever that is criminal, that we deem as criminal in the report, that we cannot recover, or we can recover, but we think there should be a criminal prosecution on that particular audit exception, would refer to the Anti-Corruption Commission.
What does the Constitution say concerning the relationship between the Public Accounts Committee in Parliament and the Anti-Corruption Commission as it connects to the Auditor General's report?
Well, I am sure.
I ask because the ACC not long ago, before we left for the Christmas break, was in the studio, and the submission was Parliament is somewhat putting a pause on their inquiry into the Auditor General's reports until Parliament is done, and then Parliament can refer what it wants to refer to the ACC. And
that is the position. The position is, if you look at the drafters of the Constitution and the Constitution we have now, it was passed into law in 1991. Then there was no thought of passing into law a legislation for the setting up of an anti-corruption agency. So directly, there is no connection between the PAC and the Anti-Corruption Commission. But however, the audit report, as provided for in subsection 4 of section 119, is the property of Parliament. It is given to Parliament. It is for us, and I appreciate it a whole lot, that at the time when a vacuum was created in the management of the Auditor General's reports, I am not casting any aspersion on anybody, but at the time when vacuum was created, the Anti-Corruption Commission was proactive enough to ensure that they closed that vacuum, and they did not allow an open-ended space for unaccountable activities and transaction in governance that are unclear and unexplained. So for me, what they have done is a clear show of the synergy that should exist between the accountability bodies in government. Before now, They were doing it because a vacuum existed. And now the PAC has taken its rightful position. The PAC is doing exactly what was expected by the drafters of the Constitution. And what we're doing sits very well with the Anti-Corruption Commission. Even though we don't report to them, they report to us. But as an accountability family, we work in close proximity. And they now understand that where we have a jam and where there are issues that requires prosecution, that is of criminal intent, that is of criminal nature, would refer it to them, and they will move forward with the evidence we would have gathered. Let me give you an instance. They looked at the issue of the Sierra Leone Commercial Bank and the acquisition of the... Having looked at it, having gone through it, they put out a report. And the report, we looked at the report, and we had to implement the recommendations from the Anti-Corruption Commission. It doesn't mean that Parliament is a subset of the Anti-Corruption Commission, but they had already, at the time when the vacuum was created, started work on it. And what they did was brilliant.
And that takes us to what I really wanted to get, but I needed this information to lead us to the whole issue with the Auditor General, former Auditor General and her deputy, is not unconnected to investigation into the alleged fake receipts in the office of the president. Now, I had asked the ACC, since that information was made public, what did they do about it? They said they started an investigation to that, but since the Parliament is now taking up its responsibility to look into the audit reports, they have had to stop their investigation. So this brings us straight to Parliament. When would you be looking into that allegation of the alleged fake receipts in the office of the president?
Well, what happened is this. I think it was a report submitted in 2020 or 2021, I cannot remember. So you would realize that when I took over in 2024, yes, I had to combine both the 2021 and 2022 reports. And even that, I could not, as a committee, we could not do exhaustive work on everything. So what we are doing is, as we work on the 2023 reports, we'll still be taking up issues that are left hanging in the 2020, 2021, and 2022 reports, so as to ensure that we complete them and get a final position on them, because at the end of the day, they would keep reoccurring because all these issues don't go away.
Honorable Tawa, it doesn't give me pleasure to interrupt you, but that allegation for manipulated receipts in the office of the presidency obviously has nothing to do with the president as an individual, because even the poorest countries in the world, the president does not handle his affairs. There are people paid to handle those things. But it brings not only an embarrassment to the office of the presidency, but also to the country as a whole. But it seems neither the ACC nor the Public Accounts Committee is taking that allegation as seriously as it should by investigating the people who were in office during that time, who are allegedly involved in that situation. How serious is this to you?
Okay, let's also look at it from this angle, that Parliament also has a principle in the standing orders, that whatever that is in court, and the tribunal is the equivalent of the appeals court, yeah, or the high court, yeah. And if it's before the tribunal, it is sub judice for Parliament also to look into it. But that situation,
the tribunal was not investigating the alleged fake receipts.
No, the tribunal
was investigating the professional conduct.
Exactly.
So the professional conduct
and the receipts,
of the people in office then?
And the receipts are part of the evidence that came before the tribunal. So at that point, Parliament is hands-tied. At that point when I took over, I'm hands-tied to look into it.
But now Parliament is free. The tribunal have rounded up. They have presented their report. It leads us to what you've not answered. How seriously do you take these allegations within the office of the presidency, which not only embarrasses the office of the president, but the nation at large, especially that it has to do with other countries?
We take every issues raised by the Auditor General very seriously, and we'll look into them openly.
Would you be looking into this one?
I have just said that at the time when I took over, this was a report, I think, in 2021 or 2020. So we had to combine the 2021.
Yeah, but now just for clarity's sake,
so,
would you be looking into that
what
allegation?
I have said also is we would continue to look at other issues that are still hanging in the 2020, 2021, and 2022 report.
Specifically, would
So
you be
if
looking into this issue?
of the receipt is still hanging. There are other issues in the office of the president.
Yeah, but let's just speak to this one specifically. Would you be looking into this one?
We would have to look.
Honorable Tawa, how much has exactly been recovered during this session of the PAC's probing into the audit report?
Well, comprehensively, we were targeting 50 billion. But as at the time, the numbers that we've put together, we had recovered about 30 billion from the 2021 and 2022 reports. And this ranges from monies that we are held in the account of MNOs, from taxpayers, from big businesses, from payments for the use or the operation of the machinery operation, and a lot of other areas in government, including ministries, individuals. We had recovered numerically. We can confirm that the 6 months for which we worked as the PAC, when I led the PAC, when I took over the committee, we had recovered about 30 billion. And it is not stopping there, because some of the issues that we are raised in those reports are also in this report. Some are not in the same vein or in the same fashion, but they are almost similar. For example, let me give you an example. The MNOs were owing UADF about 10.5 billion. That was an issue in 2020 and in 2021 report. It also showed up in 2022. When we took over, we recovered it, they paid. Yeah, but in this report, there is also an issue with regards the MNOs not disclosing their final audited accounts to UADF, which makes it impossible for UADF to calculate exactly what is the percentage of the 7.5, what is the volume of money that they should pay to them. And we're going to look into it as well and ensure that these things should stop. So there are other recurring issues in the previous report that are still in this report that we are going to ensure that we cover. And we've designed a different recovery template for 2023.
We've